So the first story we're going to cover is actually from the conspiracy iceberg. And it's one that is not super well known. I think the phenomenon is well known, but usually it's in other things. There's been reports, even today, not actually literally today, but even in modern times, there's reports of just fish falling in the middle of the plains of Idaho, or a bunch of, I don't know, octopuses falling all over the desert. And basically what it is they're water spouts that suck up a bunch of water, and fish are like, ah! It's like the worst alternate ending to Finding Nemo you can imagine. And they all just get dumped, like 50 fish just get dumped in the middle of nowhere. So you're walking through the forest, and you just see a bunch of fish laying on the ground, and they're dead. And you're like, oh, that sucks. But, well, actually, you'd probably be like, that's quite mysterious. I don't think you would automatically just feel sorry for the fish. But that's a known phenomenon. It's really weird because that's how a lot of plant life gets seeded to islands, are these water spouts. And even animals, little bugs have gotten sucked up in these water spouts and then dropped off on an island, and they're like, this is our new home, family. And then they were like, how did this type of mosquito get to this island from a water spout? But we're not talking about water spouts today. The year is 1876. America had been founded for 100 years already, and things were going great other than that Civil War that just ended not too long ago. We're in Bath County, Kentucky. So a bunch of little Kentuckians running around, doing stuff, and thatched huts, just living off the land. One day there's a farmer out there, smoking his corncob pipe, thinking of someday of starting a feed and seed store, but today he's just trying to enjoy the good weather. Thump, 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 thump. The farmer's like, what in the world? What in tarnation is that? Thump, 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 thump. He starts to see bloody, chunky pieces of flesh and meat fall from the sky. Well, I will smack my butt and call me. Okay, enough of that. Anyways, so he sees all this blood stuff. It fell from the sky. Okay, now here's the thing. It wasn't just like a little pile of it. It didn't like neatly form like a little pile. It covered an area by 100 yards by 50 yards, so quite sizable. Now, the whole thing wasn't covered in glop. It wasn't like you couldn't walk, you couldn't see the ground. But there was bloody chunks everywhere, just spread out everywhere. Now, of course, what are you going to do? You're going to call your friends. They didn't have phones back then, so he just ran to town and said, hey guys, you got to come check this out. There's a bunch of bloody meat all over my lawn. So they all show up. And sure enough, it's still there. It's still bloody. It's still fleshy. Still pretty gross. So what do? It's 1876. You're curious. You want to know what this is. So they started eating it to figure out what it was. They started eating it. Now, they go, okay, that's disgusting. Like, I think it's gross enough. Like, people still eat roadkill, but I get it. It's a survival thing. And, you cook it and you're fine. But if a bunch of meat mysteriously fell from the heavens, I'd be thinking maybe an angel got caught in it. Well, they didn't even have planes back then. I was thinking maybe an angel just got blown up. Someone threw some dynamite up, blew it to smithereens. But anyways, they started eating it. And basically, there was a bunch of disagreements. Some people said it tasted like lamb. It tastes a lot like lamb. Another guy's like, no. This is deer meat. This is definitely deer meat. And one guy, a famous hunter in the area, said, no, I know exactly what it is. It's bear. It has to be bear. I've eaten bear my entire life. I was eating bear in the womb. My mom put a teddy bear up there. I ate it. This is bear. They did take it eventually to get tested by like some old-timey scientists. So they had like beakers and stuff like that and bubbling little vials. And they tested it and they came back. They said it's lung tissue. And all the hunters and everyone who tasted it's like, yeah. And then the scientist goes, it's lung tissue of either a horse. And everyone's like, what? Or a human baby. All the hunters throw up. A human baby. Now, apparently, their lungs are similar in material, like the way their lungs are. And here's the thing. So the old-timey scientists and the modern-day scientists felt that what happened was, and again, this puts eating it into a new perspective. They think that some vultures ate something, and then when vultures are scared, they vomit up the food that they ate so they can fly away quicker. Now, I've never tried that particularly myself. I've never been eating at McDonald's and a bunch of hoodlums running, and I'm like, gotta go, and just like bounce out the back door. But apparently that's a survival mechanism for vultures. Maybe we should try it. Maybe we'd get out of more sticky situations. They're like slipping on the vomit. But they said it was vultures throwing it up. So these people may have eaten human baby, and they may have eaten vulture vomit, but the debunking to the debunking is that vultures only weigh up to 6 pounds in America. And there was a ton of meat there. Like, there was more meat than you would have to have a flock of vultures, which, they are social creatures in America. So who knows? That's a Kentucky meat storm. But what's odd is 9 days after the Kentucky meat storm, it happened again in London. Bunch of meat just fell from the sky. But that's small potatoes, or that's small chunks of baby lung compared to what happened in 1968. So now we are in modern times. We've got much better scientific techniques. People aren't walking around picking up meat, just eating it. So, we're good. We're solid. It's 1968. We're in the Paraíba Valley in Brazil. Paraíba Valley. And it's August 15th. There's a police officer just driving around on his motorcycle, running a siren for no reason. He's in the middle of nowhere. Comes across a field of blood and meat. 1 square kilometer of blood and meat. Stops his motorcycle. Looking everywhere. Looking for a bunch of body parts. There's nothing there. Just little chunks of meat. Blood. So anyways, the police officer's like, this is disgusting. I'm used to seeing gross stuff, but not just mysterious gross stuff. That's different. Now, he obviously starts talking to people. He's like, hey, dude, what's up with all this blood in your field? And they're like, we saw it. The locals were like, we saw it happen. Cop's like, okay, what happened? They're like, it came from the sky. What? Yeah, we were at work. There was a ton of reports in this area. People were at work. I think some of them were bricklayers, and some people were just doing their laundry. Then all of a sudden, droplets of blood started falling, and huge chunks of meat. When I say huge, they're about the size of a quarter or a little bit bigger. They weren't flank steaks falling down in rump roast, but any size of meat falling from the sky is too large to fall on you. The locals were like, yeah, dude, we were just working. All of a sudden, I looked down, my hand was covered in blood. I look up, chunks of meat are falling at me. We all ran inside. Women were doing their laundry. They're like, gotta do my laundry again. No planes flew by. They're like, listen, man, where we're at, there's no planes. We're not in any sort of flight path or anything like that. We don't know what could have caused that, because people are like, well, maybe a plane hit a goose or a whole flock of geese, chopped them all up, turned them into meat, and people are like, there's no planes. We're not in a flight path. We didn't see a plane. We didn't hear a plane. Just a bunch of blood started falling down. And actually, this one, they were the size of small steaks. So yeah, probably a little bit, probably about the size of your hand. They were spongy and purplish. Ugh. So that makes me think more lung, because lungs do tend to be purple. But it was a mystery. People were like, well, we found all this meat. All this blood fell down. That's super spooky. People thought it was the end of the world, obviously. 25 days later, same valley, noon. It's a nice sunny day. It's 12 p.m. I can't see my shadow. This is cool. This is always the best part of my day when my shadow disappears, because they scare me. But instead of shadows, more blood. It just comes out of the sky. Blood and meat begins raining down. It's always the blood first, which is weird. The blood comes down first. It lasted 3 to 4 minutes this time, and when they were able to collect all the meat, it weighed a total of 3.5 pounds of meat, just falling everywhere. So they take it to the scientists. And they're like, what is this stuff falling on us? And the scientist is like, This was odd. It was very specific in one thing, but then they didn't really know. They said it's heart and kidneys, most likely heart and kidneys, of a female mammal. That was as good as they could get. Human, goat, who knows? Any female mammal. So that it's just, I thought it was weird that they were able to determine the sex of the chunks, but not like exactly what they were. But they said most likely heart and kidneys. Now, these guys weren't eating them. They're like, this stuff is purple and gross and it's falling from the sky. We think it's the end of the world. We're not going to eat angel flesh. But they still don't know what causes this. Again, the explanation in the old time was vultures. And when you look at articles on this, they'll be like, oh, this was debunked. It was just vultures. But the amount of vultures you would need to spit up 100 yards worth of meat and blood is quite a lot. And then in the Brazil story in 1968, they said, yeah, birds might be throwing up, a plane might hit something. But the locals are like, no, that stuff didn't happen. And then science just goes, oh, well, then don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It is weird that it happened twice within a month in Brazil, in the same area. So what is causing meat to fall from the sky? Nobody knows. Tons of different answers. Tons of different questions. This would be what would be chilling. Imagine you were a serial killer in another country. You're like chopping up your victim, and you're like, now I just have to dispose of this body. And then a water spout's like, sucks them out. Now, I guess you would have to be near the ocean to do that, or like killing people on a boat. But what a great way to dispose of bodies. Just go to a place where there's a bunch of water spouts and you're like, throw them in the water and then you just sail away before the water spout gets you as well. Who knows? Who knows what's happening? It is a mystery. It is definitely a strange occurrence that happens on this planet. And people try debunking it. But the fact is that at any point you could be walking down the street and all of a sudden blood and meat start falling on you. My one piece of advice, it may be a human baby, so please, please, please don't eat it. Just leave it on the ground. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.